And so, I mean, do you, whether it's a project for work, whether it's, anything else that you're working on, do you ever find, Charity, that the details slow you down? Do you want it to be perfect when you release it, or do you feel like it makes more sense to release it at 70%, 80%? And
Yeah, my therapist and I talk about this a lot, actually. To back up from there, my family, we played a game over Christmas where it was a fun game where you kind of put down words that describe people. You have to guess who put down the word and who are they describing. And more than one member of my family wrote down the word meticulous, and it was definitely me.
That was you.
And so that will stop me because I want to. Sometimes ideas hit me all at once, and then I won't release it or act on it until I have worked out every last part of it. So I really am working on that. I want to go back one more chapter to your our discussion about you putting on a jacket. I didn't tell you to put on a suit, but here's what I want. I think this is relevant because when I met you, you have a definite what's the word? You have a brand just in the way you look, right? You have a beard. You have cool graphic tees and hoodies. You've got I can't even remember if I've seen you wear the same hat twice. You must have this huge hat collection. And I thought if you add a jacket to that hoodie and put on a cool pair of kicks and, this and that, we could really craft that. And we did work around that. And now your logo and everything includes the way your glasses, your beard. So just visually how you came across me without even knowing you well. I think we only knew each other, a couple weeks at that point. I think, and that's how the ideas hit me is like, I saw you and thought I could throw a jacket on that guy and give him some cool shoes, and that could be like a brand, so.
No, and I think it's, this is something I think that is maybe common in relationships and marriages. You were saying stuff that my wife had been telling me for a long time. And it's sort of like I needed the credibility of somebody else to say it. It's kind of like at our Christmas party, everybody was telling my wife, "Oh, you're stunning." And I was like, yeah, she is stunning. But it was sort of like I needed somebody else to say it for me to fully appreciate it. And I think that sometimes, I can be too, for me personally, I know I can be way too close to the situation. Like I said, I think everything's a great great idea for the first 48 hours. And it's important to have people, especially if you're going to be, I think that doing what I do, the way that we do it, building relationships with realtors and people, here in the community, I think that is an art. And I think that artists can become, they have a vision, they know what they're going to do, but it is always helpful to have some sort of input from somebody else who's credible. And I think it's interesting that you talk about being meticulous and that because that's exactly how I would consider you. And I have in the past sort of had that same attitude. And over the last 6, 7, 8 months, I've just, everything that I've tried has either worked or resulted in a really good story. And so now I'm sort of at the point where I'm like, at 70%, it's good enough. Let's give it a shot. Yeah. But at the same time, before you were here in the earlier today, we were having problems with the setup or whatever, and I was losing my mind. I'm like, why are we having this problem right now? What would have done? But that type of stuff happens. You have to deal with it. So, but yeah, I think the details matter. And for me, I think, especially in communication and the way that we talk, but I don't think I'm as visual just naturally as the two of you and some people are. For me, it's all about things that you say and trying to be efficient, in your words and create the proper feelings, in a genuine way with the people that you're around and you're talking to, because at the end of the day, it's how people feel about you that reflects on what your brand actually is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember famous quote. They remember how you make them feel, not what you did or said or looked like or what your product was. Yeah. But how did you make them feel?
I had when I first got into sales in the car business, I had a guy who'd been in the business for a number of years tell me, "Hey, this job is super easy. All you got to do is get them to like you." And I remember thinking, that is a really creepy way to say that, because I don't want to get anybody to like me. I want them to choose to like me. That affirmation from other people is the thing that I chase. I've figured it out. It's not money. It's not possessions. I just want everybody to look at me and be like, "Man, I really like Robert. He's a good guy." And ultimately, I want them to send me their opportunities. But I think it's important how we make each other feel. And so talking about your family. So tell me a little bit about your family. I know you have artists in your family, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean, my husband's a chef, which is, or he was. He's no longer practicing, but I guess once a chef, always a chef.
He makes dinner from time to time. That's good
He
enough.
sure does. And let's see, my youngest son is a jazz pianist, and he's 17 years old and is looking to go far, far away here in a year or so to some amazing school and be a professional musician. And then my older son is going to be 20 in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and so your son that is a piano player, so he's amazing. It's like, it's really, I mean, it's sort of, you'll post your reels, and I feel, and you know, I'm just looking at it from the outside, I feel like you have a savant there, but how does it feel to watch him perform at that level?
He's definitely not a savant, and
Yeah,
you know,
I
something
know.
but something that I learned, can't remember where, but it was the difference between Eastern kind of mothers and Western mothers. Is Western mothers will say things like, "You're so talented, you're so good at that," whereas Eastern mothers will say, "You've worked really hard at that."
Yeah.
And so I kind of shifted when I learned that, I shifted what I said. But he started when he was 4. Now there was definitely a passion. He asked to play. He wanted to learn. He kept hearing music and pointing it out to me. So we put him in lessons, and you know, and all my friends were saying, "Well, how do you get him to practice?" And I never had to get him to practice. He
Yeah.
would play all the time. And so he plays now, comes home from school. Our biggest fight is he drops the backpack right in the middle of the room on his way to the piano, you know,
Yeah.
and plays for hours. And I think he's got a good balance. He gets his homework done. He'll
Yeah.
play some Fortnite here and there with his
Yeah.
friends. But usually I'm falling asleep to the sound of piano, which is something I'm really it's starting to get real. He's he's only got 1 year left. I'm going to miss that sound.
Yeah.
I thought I should record this so I can play it when he's
Yeah.
gone. And the sadness, I don't know if you have children, we haven't gotten to that yet, of he's going to go do and live this incredibly cool life. And yeah, I'll always be his mom, but I'm not going to be part of his, if we have a healthy relationship, I'm not going to be part of his day to day. And
Yeah.
right now I'm part of his day to day and I get to enjoy all that. So I'll really miss that. But he's, he's something else. He's very self-driven and I'm really excited to see what happens with it.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a son. I have 3 boys, and my oldest is sort of in that position. So he graduated from high school. He's in the Coast Guard, 20 years old. He's in South Carolina right now. He was just in LA for the last year, and that letting go, that is, I mean, I can just tell you from my experience, it is a weird deal to know that you have a child out there functioning in the wild, and so you and Eric have a daughter.
We have a daughter, Sophie.
Okay.
Yeah, she's 20. She'll be 23 the 27th of this month.
Oh wow.
So yeah, but she lives here in KC. She moved to Chicago for a year, and then she moved to LA for a while, but then came back. But she graduated from high school in 2020, so when the year that COVID hit. So it was kind of odd for her. So she's she's doing great. She is incredibly creative.
Yeah.
Just amazing. And we adopted her. We adopted her at 5 months
Okay.
old. So so she's amazing. She changed my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, she made me the person I am now, I think. I know
Yeah.
that sounds maybe silly, but it really changed me. I don't know if you feel the same way.
100%. I think most
but-
parents would say,
I mean,
would say that.
the focus was different,
Yes.
and it was no longer about me or about Eric. It was about her. Everything was about her development. But yeah, I thank God every day that he brought her into my life.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because being a parent is the most rewarding, like satisfying thing that you could possibly do. At the same time, literally the scariest, most terrifying, like
Yes.
stressful thing at the same time. But you do your focus it shifts completely. You know, you just start to realize, wait a second, this isn't just about like me watching football today or whatever.
I thought it was going to be like getting a cat. I was
Yeah.
really surprised. Like every
Yeah.
day that baby was still sitting in
Yeah.
the living room, I was like, oh, he's still here, you know. And I was not. I didn't enjoy. I mean, of course I love my kids, but I didn't. There was nothing about the screaming and the changing diapers and all. You know, before they have their like logic about them that I really
Yeah.
enjoyed. I never thought I really wanted to have kids, so that was really hard. But then when they turned into, people,
Yeah.
it just got better and better. And now
Yeah.
it feels like at the ultimate of when you're most enjoying them is when they leave.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. And I feel, for me, and I think it's more common with dads as well, that feeling. But yeah, that's very relatable. I mean, for me, until they could tell me what was wrong, it was just a weird relationship. You know what I mean? I needed, when they could tell me why they were upset, then I start to, okay, I can get it. And then you realize they have personalities. And all 3 of my boys, it's so interesting because all 3 of them are different. I have a 20-year-old, I have a 15-year-old, I have a 12-year-old, and they're all so different. Yeah, I mean, I think that it is, when you start having children, you realize that you're not necessarily living for yourself, and you start to think, you start to view the world, like you see the differences, right? We've talked about this. We grew up in a different world than what our children are growing up in. And for me, I see a lot of opportunity there for them. I'm excited about a lot of things, but there are also a lot of situations where I'm just like, I don't know how they're going to do it. You know, I mean, I've said this before. I used to have to like face rejection face to face with people. You know, now everybody does so much on like their devices, messaging and stuff. You know, there's the communication overall to me seems like it's a challenge. Is there anything that you see, you know, when you look at your daughter and you consider, you know, the state of the world? I mean, are you hopeful for her? Do you have concerns for her? What are your thoughts?
I am hopeful for her, and I do have concerns because of the way the generation is nowadays. It just doesn't, it's not the same as when we grew up or when I grew up. I think I'm older than both of you, but when we grew up, we were just kind of workhorses, and we were taught to, okay, get a job, graduate from high school, go to college, get a job, marry, children. At least that's how my world was, because I grew up in a pretty sheltered environment.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other story. But so we were told to just work. We were supposed to work hard, and that's all we were supposed to do, and just get through life. But as far as nowadays, I think that, you know, because of all the technology that everybody has and everything's at their fingertips, I think everybody thinks that they, you know, they want it now and very fast and very short. I mean, they don't want to work a lot, but they just want the money now. And then I think that that's their mentality. At least that seems to be the mentality of my daughter and her friends. And I think that that's just embedded in them because of the social environment is so different. I mean, when I grew up, I didn't have a phone. We didn't have any of that stuff. I mean, I'd have to get on my land phone, my mother's land phone that was on the wall, and I'd have 10 minutes to talk on it because my dad was a minister, and so he needed to have the phone at his access. So it's so different now because everything is just at their fingertips, and then they don't even communicate with each other. I mean, I don't know if you've seen young people sitting in a room and they're both on their phones and there's no communication going on. Now, then you find out that they're communicating because they're texting each other. Yeah. That's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah.
But
that sometimes goes on in sales meetings too, but maybe I shouldn't have said that in front of Charity.
It's obvious.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, how do you feel about it with your boys? I mean, when you look at it.
I'm most interested, I think, well, one thing you said about, you know, I remember my dad, I think every generation thinks that the next generation is too fast to want things. I remember my dad when I was like 25 and I was saying, you know, I'm working at that resort and I'm like, I could do what my boss is doing better than she could. I always thought that I deserved more quicker. And so I expect that any generation is going to just want more of that and faster. I'm really curious to see how our kids will handle devices for their kids because we didn't, I think we're about the same age, but
Be embedded in.
Yeah, well, I just wonder if they'll make different choices because we did. You know, the first smartphone came out the year that my youngest son was born, so we didn't have those growing up. And then, you know, I thought I was a pretty good mom by holding off to like 8th grade to give them one. But I don't think I'm curious to see if our kids will hold off longer because of what it did to them. I think loneliness is a huge problem. I see that with both of my kids and every mom I know that has high school students says they don't go anywhere, they don't call anyone, they don't talk to anyone. They're talking, they're playing games. It's different than how we did it. So I try to keep an open mind of like maybe communication just looks different now, just because it's not face to face. Maybe it's something else. But I think that, you know, my older son, he was supposed to probably have been born in the 50s because he doesn't want a phone, he doesn't have any apps, he's not into it, and that's what's made him lonely is because everyone else is on those. And so how does he meet people when he's not online?
Yeah, that's a concern for me is you know, the face-to-face communication. There's a lot of value in that, and I think for me, I sort of benefit from the fact that not as many people are in my business out there searching to do that. But it does give me concern because I think about, you know, with my oldest Xander, I think he had like one extra summer where he had to go outside and like play around, and he's 20 and he does not have the attachment to the devices that I see with people like his same age. He'll forget his phone. I mean, I won't forget my phone. I'd lose my mind if I did that. And it is interesting to think about how that's gonna play out generationally.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like, like smoking and stuff in our food, right? Like
When we know better, we'll do better.
Yeah, yeah. You would hope, but like innovation, I mean, doesn't really account for any side effects, right? It's always, this is going to make something easier, or it's cooler, or whatever, and we just continue to innovate, and we just, it's why we learn that like monocropping and things like that is poisoning our food. And I feel like with communicating with like social media, and that's the thing that I worry about with kids these days as well. But at the same time, I also understand how that makes me sounds like an old man. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
My parents were saying kind of the same stuff about me, about Atari,
yes.
right? I mean, it just is what it is. I mean, the wheel keeps spinning. The planet's still here. People are still here, and they just have to deal with the reality.
And every generation thinks the next one is
Yes.
screwed.
Yeah.
So that we are sounding old.
And I agree with Charity as far as the loneliness goes. The thing that worries me about young people these days is the relationships that they think they're building through the social media and everything, because there's no one-on-one interaction, it seems like. And I think the loneliness even comes in with them, the ones that are the most sociable, because there's not that real interaction. I mean, how many times I've said, why don't you just call her? Why don't you just go see her?
I have said that.
Why are you just texting?
Yeah.
Pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Or go see her, or go see him, or work this out. Well, no, I don't want to do that. That makes me look crazy.
Man, I've had so many arguments in relationships over text messages
Yes.
that could have been just walking downstairs and like sorting that stuff out. I think it's crazy. But so there are some negatives definitively to social media.
Yes.
But there are some, especially in our businesses, there are definitely some positives for it.
Right.
Obviously it's, when we talk about brand, it's easier for individuals today to establish and to promote a brand, right? But I feel like it's even more effective if you can match it face to face.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think for me, that as I was figuring out, talking about my brand, as I was figuring that out, what I wanted more than anything was, if you get online and you see, something I post, some music on a song or whatever, and then you sit across from me, you're like, okay, yeah, that's the same guy. So authenticity is something I think that's really important in a brand. And so when you work with Charity, when you work with an individual, whether it's loan officer or realtor, like to build that band, like you start out right with them as an individual, like what do they have to offer? But then where do you go from that point?
Yeah, tying into what are if they don't, a lot of people don't even know what their thing is, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can go back to you, for example. Just the other day, I was throwing out some ideas of like maybe a newsletter you could do that's not mortgagey, right? And I was like, so what would I want to hear from Robert since I know you? And you might not have even realized, like, I want to know what coffee shops you're going to. I want to see what T-shirts you wore this week or what your hat said. What else we talk about? This podcast, those kinds of things. So I try to really work with people when I'm helping them with their brand to get them to go out and ask. And in fact, I did this before I came here because I thought we were going to be talking about personal branding, which we are. So I asked people at work, what would you say, what are words that make you think of me? Or like if someone asks you to describe me, not my hobbies or anything, but what type of person am I? And I got some answers. At first I was a little worried because it was like blank stares. I was like, do I not have anything? So let's see what Mike said. Mike's somebody we work with. Impactful. Like, it's really important for me to make an impact. If I'm going to do something, I want it to like change. And then Reagan said, yeah, you always make something better than what you found it. Yeah. So you can take something kind of crappy I've heard before and kind of turn it into a shiny diamond. Yeah. So that's one thing. Someone else said like fashion and music. I'm always talking about where I got my jeans or whatever it is, so I like that. And I already noticed your outfit, which is awesome, by the way.
I got you. Already checked out the
what
shoes.
did I wear? So, starting with that, we had another loan officer recently join us, and she didn't really have any idea where to go with her brand. But we found out she loves gardening. She loves baking. And I was like, what if it was like this whole, tie it into home, how you're teaching, she gardens, all these kind of things. How do you grow, and how do you do that in your new home? You could even do little video series on your cinnamon roll recipe, whatever it is. And so she was like, oh, those are good ideas. So I think it's finding what you're already passionate about and then tying it in to what you're doing. I mean, yours is great. You already have art, which you brought into a coffee shop. It matches your educational background and your professional background. And then real estate ties in so well to all of that too. So it's not something you necessarily have to like manufacture.
Yeah.
It's something that's already part of who you are.
Yeah, I think it's something that, and I know that I've done it, and I think probably a lot of people do it. It's just one of those examples where you overthink, especially if you're in an industry like we are in that is relationship driven. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, have you ever had somebody and been like, man, there ain't no, I can't sell this?
No.
No?
Everybody's got something.
Yeah, yeah.
I've had my doubts, like, what's this khaki pants guy got to say? But we find it. We find it.
Yeah, I think for me, that's, I want to add this extra layer of like extra degree of difficulty to everything because I want to do it in a way that I'm like nobody else is doing it. And, so I think in some ways I've benefited from that. But in other ways, like I say, I'm just adding like a layer of difficulty because there's some standard things, there's some basic things that you can do, right, to have your brand be recognized, to be, consistency is one of them. But like, so beyond the brand itself, what are things that you can do to help kind of like take that brand to market and kind of expand and grow that brand?
I don't know if this answers your question, but something else that just came to my mind is your voice is something that's so important. The way that you communicate, I was a journalism major and I wrote for a long time for a living. And so I know your voice, like when you're writing the words you use, you've got humor in your arsenal. I think you and I are both funny. I think we both are funny.
I know you think that.
In our writing.
No, yeah.
And so it's not just about the things or the colors, like I said, or the fonts, but even the writing voice too. And what was your question again?
I can't remember. But now you make me want to talk about something else, which is writing, mm-hmm. which I fundamentally, that is my favorite way to communicate. And the reason is because I want to take the time to like craft it out. I'll post but of course, I'll be in a hurry and I'll post something on Facebook and like literally like 30 seconds later, I'm back in there trying to edit it before you see it because there've been times that like I've had like a typo and she's like the one person that knows about it. But for me, like, writing is key because I think if you're a good writer, you're a good communicator, which is also, everybody just texts anymore. So mm-hmm. I don't see that as something.
It's an ongoing argument with my husband and I. He, doesn't care too much about, and my older son's the same way, maybe a little dyslexia in the family. Yeah. Well, we know for sure my son has that, and I think maybe my husband might a little bit. And he's like, it doesn't matter if something's spelled right or if, and it's like, but it matters so much, and so this is and he says, if it's a text, nobody cares. And I said, I care. Like I would judge somebody that would send that,
I had a boss, when I was at Toyota, my GM he was like, I'm always amused that you have punctuation in your text. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, it's the written word.
I have paragraphs in my text.
Me too.
It's the written word. But what I was asking you is how do you take your brand to market? Like, mm-hmm. once you kind of define what your brand is, what are things that you can do to take your brand to market and to get it out there for people beyond just posting?
Yeah. Work with definitely the things I said weren't part of your brand. They're definitely part of it. Once you find out what your voice is, what your passions are, what you kind of want to be known for. And it can be, like I worked with a realtor recently who was working through this one problem. And I said, when you go into a new house that you're showing, what excites you the most? Like if something's really good, she's like light fixtures. She's like passionate about light fixtures. I'm like, there's a thing. People would love to follow a channel that, has like Kansas City's coolest light fixtures. Like what have you seen while showing, while you're out there and take pictures. And she started now taking pictures of light fixtures at restaurants and hotels. And it's kind of become a thing. So getting it out there is, I recommend creating some pillars for messaging. You've probably heard me talk about this, because if you're just kind of randomly deciding what is my brand, your message will be too vague. And they're really comfortable when they know what to expect from you. So you might be feeling like you're saying the same things over and over and over again. But think about the people that you follow on Instagram. If I've got women over 50 into fitness, that's in my feed a lot, right? Yeah. So the women are saying the same things. Eat your protein, walk 10,000 steps a day, whatever else. And they're just saying the same things, but I still look at all their posts. So by pillars, I mean for a coffee shop, it might be we're going to do a artist highlight is going to be one of our pillars. We're going to do that once a week. We're going to do a coffee of the week recipe or something like that, something you can make at home. We're going to highlight a customer. We're going to talk about the neighborhood. We're going to be the Pendleton Heights like expert, and we're going to share our customer reviews. So you've got 5 pillars, and that way you're just kind of playing in that same messaging over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you want to be known for? Like, what do you want your brand here? Like, what do you want your brand to be known for? I mean, is it art? Is it?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
As far as the coffee shop itself, I want to be known for good coffee,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
But I think more than that, I want to be known for, I know this is probably going to sound so silly, but like a friendly face,
Yeah.
a friendly person that whoever you meet behind the barista area will change you somehow. So whenever I am working here, which is every day, I and I tell my baristas if I have baristas, I'm always like, okay, if I want you to find out one thing from that person,
Yeah.
one thing, it could be just, are you headed to work? How's your morning going so far? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I always say, challenge them to get one thing, know one thing, and then when they come in again, know another thing,
Yeah.
and then just keep building that relationship.
It's
And
crazy because now I know everybody.
Yeah. Everybody in the neighborhood. Yeah.
he
Like,
does.
I do. I literally do.
We have so many regulars. So I think it's just, I mean, yes, I want to have good coffee and I want people to feel, you know, like they're getting what they ordered and that kind of thing. But I also want them to feel like they
Seen.
just stepped into, like they just stepped into somewhere that actually knows
Like
them or,
Create a community.
Yeah.
yes, that's true.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and so it's interesting because, you know, I've said this before, but really it's been the last year and a half that I have gotten into Kansas City. I mean, I've lived here since 2001, but all I knew was the corridor that I would commute on because I was working so many hours. And so, you know, I come in here and I love this place. It's like I'm in here multiple times a week, but the reality is there's probably dozens of other little pocket
Oh, there
communities
are.
all throughout Kansas City. And, you know, and I now have, you know, the flexibility in my time or the space where I can work and I can seek those places out. But yeah, I mean, for me, when I think about, I don't know if it's brand, but when I meet somebody, if I spend some time with them, I want them to walk away feeling like they just met someone. Okay. And I'm not necessarily saying they have to be like crazy about me and be like, man, that guy's like whatever, or do alone with me. I want them to just feel like, you know, they just met an I don't know. I sort of want to just be this kind of weird, interesting character that just passes through people's, you know, lives, you know, for whatever point they need. Because we meet so many people. There are so many opportunities to connect with people. And as much as I want to make that connection, I want to feel that they made that connection with me as well, which again, you know, I've talked about it. I chase affirmation, which makes me like the perfect person to be selling. So, but do you guys mind if we talk about what I've been wanting to talk about this whole time?
Let's get to
Okay,
it.
so I'd like to share with you guys a little bit more information about a 2-1 buy down.